Last week with my friend Matt, you spoke one of your heroes, and politically you said one of your heroes was Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Due to his optimism. I've also heard you speak as of Tom Kean Sr. as someone that for a long period of time you've looked up to and have learned from, and he's honorary chair of your campaign, is still a mentor of yours.
Yes.
If you will, and talked about how I've heard you speak about how when he started as governor, he had two houses of Democrats.
Yes.
As Reagan had two houses for most of his 8 years as president too. Will you ever more like a Ronald Reagan or more like a Tom Kean?
Well, I think it's going to depend on the issue. I think generally I'm more in line with Ronald Reagan in terms of my positions on issues, but I also think Tom Kean had a great ability to bring people around to compromise, and also a great enthusiasm about our state that made us feel really good about where we lived. So I think I'd like to take elements of both of them, but philosophically I think I'm much closer to Reagan than I might be to Kean. But I would hope that from a style perspective, which is important, and symbolism is important in leadership, I hope that I would take elements of both of them, because Governor Kean led the state during a time when we felt, for most of his term, we felt very, very good about who we were as a people and who we were as a state. We were enormously successful. We grew 450,000 new private sector jobs during his time as governor. It's a pretty good time, and he and Ronald Reagan were governing at the same time. So I'd like to take elements of both of them.
Good, but you think philosophically you're closer to Reagan than you are to Kean, even though Kean's your mentor.
Well, yeah, sure, but Ronald Reagan didn't live in Livingston.
Yeah.
Tom Kean did, and that's who I met when I was 14 years old. And so Governor Kean's been a mentor to me in the sense that the way he conducted himself in government, with the integrity he showed, the honesty he showed, those are the ways that I've modeled myself after Tom Kean, because he was someone who no one has ever questioned his honesty or his integrity. You can disagree with him on issues, and I certainly disagree with him on some issues. But the fact of the matter is, he's always shown great honesty and integrity in pursuing his policies, and people have known where he stands.
Yeah. I heard you say earlier today that the Democrats don't really have anything to run on other than to attack you, and those attacks have started earlier than I thought that they would. It's been in the news. Every election season, we kind of get a new kind of word in our vocabulary, and I thought the new word in New Jersey's lexicon would be, or common lexicon might be COA, but it looks like it might also be deferred prosecution agreement.
Sure.
Two Democratic congressmen came and introduced legislation on the heels of your press conference last week and highlighted the deferred prosecution agreements that you did, and then the press came up with the appointment of David Kelly for a monitoring agreement, and he had been a prosecutor that had looked into your brother. And the more I looked into the stuff about your brother and that whole prosecution, I realized, well, David Kelly was not half the prosecutor that Christe is, because out of the 15 people he looked at for that, 10 in that whole scandal, 10 of those cases were dropped. 3 of them pled guilty and had even the pleas reversed later. Nothing came out of any of them.
That's true.
But they're trying to hang something on you, making it look like you used the influence of your office to get your brother out of trouble. You also said to Matt that Tom Seaver was one of your heroes.
He was.
Because of his preparation and his discipline. So I don't think you were surprised that this was coming.
Oh, no. No, and in fact, I had a press conference today about this in Trenton. And I stood there for an hour and took every question that anybody in the Trenton press corps had about this. Listen, I said back in February at my announcement speech that this was going to be a highly negative and personal campaign against me, because my record as U.S. Attorney is really unassailable. We didn't lose a political corruption case in 7 years. We thwarted 2 major terrorist attacks. We had the 2 biggest child pornography prosecutions in America in the last 8 years, arresting over 1,800 people. We broke up one of the major street gangs in North Jersey and put 45 gang members in jail for hundreds of years combined. So when you look at that record, you know what's left. They're going to come at you personally. They're going to come at your family. Let's lay a couple of facts out on the table. First and foremost, David Kelly and I never have, nor to this day have ever discussed the investigation that he conducted into my brother and others who worked on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And we never would, because that's the way prosecutors operate. We wouldn't put ourselves in that position. Secondly, my brother has been found to have done absolutely nothing wrong. First of all, he wasn't indicted. And I can tell you this, if my brother had done something wrong and that David Kelly thought he could prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, I'm convinced he would have indicted him. Because that's what we do as prosecutors, regardless of who's on the other end of the indictment. So he wasn't indicted. Secondly, he was sued by the SEC in a civil case. When they sued him, they demanded his ban from the industry for life, a public censure, over $4 million in fines and penalties, and a finding that he committed fraudulent conduct. Now, let's fast forward to what happened. No fine, no censure, no ban for the business, not even for a day, no finding that he engaged in any fraud, and no finding or admission by him that he engaged in any wrongdoing at all. If you can't sustain that at a civil level, when all it is a preponderance of the evidence, a little over 50%, imagine if someone would have indicted him and had to get to beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no there. And what they want to do is try to drag my younger brother through the mud, who does not deserve this, who is a victim of what the SEC did to him. The same way that those folks who were indicted and who the cases were dismissed were victimized by that. Now, David Kelly is a very good prosecutor, has been for many, many years, and I have great respect for him. Did he make mistakes in that case? I'm sure in retrospect he thinks he did. But I don't think you judge somebody's career by just one set of cases, especially when he was a prosecutor on the Cobar Towers case, prosecutor on the Blind Shake case. This is a guy who's done some pretty amazing work over time. So, fact of the matter is, I picked David Kelly at the time for a monitor for one reason only. I thought he was one of the 5 best people, and I had 5 monitors to pick, that I could possibly pick for that job. And when you look at what's happened after Art in those medical device, the artificial hip and knee companies, who were bribing doctors across America to buy their products, what's happened after this monitoring period? Nearly $500 million has been saved for the taxpayers in the Medicare program through direct fines and savings that were passed on to the taxpayer. Not a nickel of taxpayer money was spent to pay these monitors. All the monitors were paid for by the criminal corporations, not by the taxpayers. The bribing of doctors has ended across the country, and there's now full disclosure by these companies. If you go to their websites, one of the demands that we placed upon them was that they had to disclose on their websites every doctor that was retained as a consultant by them and how much money each year they paid those doctors. So now, if you're a patient going to see an orthopedic surgeon, and he says, for instance, I want to give you a Zimmer knee, Art, you need a new knee, I'm going to give you a Zimmer knee. You can go on the Zimmer website and see if he's a Zimmer consultant. And if he is, then you can ask your doctor, are you giving me a Zimmer knee because it's the best one for me? Or are you giving me a Zimmer knee because they're paying you? We're now empowering patients to ask those questions as well. David Kelly was part of making all that happen. So, listen, we have big problems in New Jersey, but these guys, the people who are the political caddies for the governor and others, are going to try to play petty personal politics. It's unseemly, candidly, that they involve my family, and if they would do a little bit of research, as you did, they would see that these cases amounted to nothing, and that my brother was a victim. And it's unfortunate that they're dragging my family into it, but that's why I went down to Trenton today and stood up and took every question, so that hopefully they'll leave my brother alone now, who is a honest, tax-paying, private citizen of the state. I'm the one running for governor. Somebody wants to come and take a shot at me, I'm standing here. Take a shot at me, but leave my family out of it.